Thank you all for inviting me to come speak here at Westside. It's always a pleasure coming here. This is a wonderful congregation, a jewel here in Fort Worth. I'm here to talk about a project that I'm involved in called the Gospel of Doubt. And this is my first time really speaking about this in public, and I think speaking about this in a UU church is a completely appropriate venue for this. So, the Gospel of Doubt, right? So, a little bit about my background. As Sean said, I come from a Christian household. That's sort of my frame of reference. I grew up taking Christianity very seriously, taking these beliefs very seriously, and Christianity still is very much a focus of much of what I do. I spend a great deal of time among the religious, among Christians specifically, and what's happening in the Christian church is something that consumes a lot of my focus and attention. Christianity, sort of distilled to its essence, is a religion, a belief system that encourages love and sacrifice and redemption and community. And those are all very good things. And I think those are things that I would like to sort of rescue from my own sort of Christian heritage, things that I would like to emphasize in the Christians that I know and interact with, my family and friends that still remain Christian. I think those are very good things to retain and to encourage them to pursue. But this notion of faith, to me, is a bit troubling. The story that's told in John of the doubting Thomas, right? So that Jesus in the story kind of turns and looks at the reader and winks at you and says, it took this guy actually seeing me in person to believe, but it's better for you if you just believe. You shouldn't need what Thomas asked for. And I wonder about that, right? And I'm not trying to disparage the concept of faith per se. When I was a believer, I valued my faith. The comfort that it gave me, the sort of sense of mystery and wonder at the world around me and things that were happening to me, and it sort of framed the way I looked at the world. And it was a very positive thing for me. But now that I've sort of taken a step back and looked at faith, par faith, right? So faith, what are we really talking about when we're talking about faith? Just faith in anything? Is faith itself a virtue no matter what that faith is in? Right? For many of us, especially in my generation, when 9/11 happened, we looked really hard at the concept of faith. Right? Because you could say many, many things about the people who perpetrated the attacks on that day. One thing you could not say about them is that they did not have faith. And so that led to, for myself and for many people like me, a introspection and a critical analysis of what this faith is. Who's telling us to have faith? Why are they telling us to have faith? People like Robert Jeffress, right? The people in the public eye who champion faith, their own faith, of course, but they say, have faith. Have faith. I wonder about Jeffress. I wonder about his faith. He seems to have much more faith in his own power to get involved in politics than in anything really productive or compassionate. I think of people like T.D. Jakes, another local figure who has used the power of faith that he inspires in his congregants to build himself a multi-million-dollar media empire, basically. That is the power of faith, too. Again, one thing you cannot say about these men is that they do not have faith. They champion the cause of faith, and look what they've done with it. Even somebody like Pope Francis, right? So Pope Francis, he's the new pope, being very much celebrated by popular culture. Although sort of in relative terms, right? When the previous pope is pretty much the Emperor Palpatine of Star Wars, it's any changes of improvement, right? Right? And he seems like a wonderful guy. I'm sure I would enjoy his company, but talk to him about his views on homosexuality. Talk to him about his views about the role of women in the church. And you will find him very unfriendly and very much relying on a type of faith that has kept the Catholic Church from moving forward for hundreds of years. If you look here in Texas, the most common manifestations of Christian faith. I've spent a lot of time on Sunday mornings going around to different Christian churches, different places. This is very much what you see nowadays. This is the Christian faith experience. It is essentially a rock concert. I'm not joking, it is essentially a rock concert with a bit of an inspirational talk thrown in there. You see stage lighting, there's smoke machines going. One church, less than a mile from where I live, even has a disco ball. I'm not joking. A disco ball that they turn on during worship. This is the manifestation of Christian faith. So, on the one hand, we're telling ourselves faith is good, but faith in this? Is this really leading to a good manifestation of faith? What do these people even believe? What do they think? What do they actually have faith in? I go to these churches sometimes and I ask them these questions very pointedly. And probably 99%, well, most of everybody that I talk to who's not a pastor has no idea what they believe, frankly. I ask them what their theology is, and most of them don't even know the word theology. Now this looks fancy, it looks really cool. If you go to one of these churches, you feel buzzed up at the end of the service, and you think everything's going really great for the Christian church in America today, but I'm telling you it's not. This is data from Trinity College American Religious Identification Survey, the ARIS survey. It was been published every decade for 3 decades. Most recently in 2008, this is showing the self-identification among the big Christian buckets. And there is a pinching going on. Whereas in 1990, 80% of America were self-identified as Christian. Now it's less than 75%. And pretty much every bucket is diminishing. The only one that's not really significantly is the Catholic bucket. And that's primarily due to immigration of new Catholics to this country. What the ARIS study also showed was that the percent of people in America who say, I'm not anything in particular, is on the increase. And they call these the nones. These are people that are self-identified as atheist, agnostic, but for the most part, it's people who say, no, I'm none of the above. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Jew, I'm not a Muslim, I'm nothing. I don't participate at all. That is on the increase. This study was replicated recently by the Pew Research Foundation. They looked at data a little bit more recently than 2008, from basically from 2007 to 2012, and they showed the same phenomenon happening. It's still shrinking. In fact, now it's below 50%. Protestants in this country are no longer a majority. That is big news. And the other thing that they correlated was the surprising increase in secular Americans. People who, you see in the green, want nothing to do with religion at all. People who are explicitly atheist and who are explicitly agnostic. The same information was shown here a few months ago when Tom Flynn spoke from the Council for Secular Humanism. Tom, let's look at these numbers a little bit closely. Tom argues that if you really break down the types of questions that people responded to in this bracket, about half of them are sort of spiritual but not religious, and the other half are secular and not religious. So if you take that into account, then fully 12 to 13% of this country are not people, the type of people that you would find here at Westside. Right? This is a tremendous opportunity, not only for free thinkers and atheists, but also for the Unitarian Church to capitalize on this growth of the nuns here in this country. Right? But that's a bit of an aside point. Let's get back to the Christians. The Christian denominations are shrinking. But what about the Christians who still remain in their denominations? What exactly do they believe? What exactly do they have faith in? A few years ago, a fellow by the name of George Barna conducted a survey. He came up with a list of 9 points, 9 basic beliefs that would describe an evangelical Christian according to his own criteria. And these are basic things, like, for example, people who say their faith is very important in their life today. People who say they believe that they have a personal responsibility to share their beliefs with other Christians. People who say that they believe that Jesus Christ lived a sinless life. These are basic beliefs, right? If you wrap these all up, this should be basic Orthodox Christianity. Well, George Barna fielded this survey to people who self-identified as Christians, which in his group was actually 40% of America at the time. How many of the people that self-identified as Christians said that they believe all these things? Does anybody have any guess? You think it was half? You think it was more than half? Less than half? How much less than half? 30%? It was 8%. 8% of self-identified Christians said yes to all 9 of those points. So the question of what do these Christians have faith in is something that even the Christians don't know. There is tremendous diversity among Christianity today. When you go and you see these gigantic mega churches and the stadium seating and the fancy lights, one thing to keep in mind is only 8% of these people actually believe what they're supposed to believe. The rest of them have really no clue. Really no clue. In the Gospel according to Matthew, Jesus says, "Truly, I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree," i.e. it was shriveled up and died, "but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, it will happen." Now this is a verse that Christians use frequently to encourage themselves and to encourage other Christians to have faith. They say, see, Jesus said, if you just have a little bit of faith, you can make amazing things happen, right? And that's kind of how this is interpreted, because this is sort of one of those passages where if you read this literally, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? Do you really think that Jesus meant if you have faith, you can tell a mountain to throw itself into the sea? Is that really what he meant? Now, of course, most Christians say that, well, that's not really what he meant, but what he's really encouraging you to do is to have faith. Well, that's one way of interpreting it. Sure, that's one way of interpreting it. That's the way the Christians do. I would suggest a slightly different interpretation. When Jesus says that if you have faith and do not doubt, you can do an impossible thing, I would suggest that the corollary to that is if you have faith and doubt, you can do possible things. Possible things that really, possible things with theology, possible things with the world around us. Jesus is encouraging us to stick our fingers in and poke around and voice our doubts. And what can we do if we're able to do that? Well, we're able to do many things, right? So back when we had nothing but faith, we thought that electricity was the weapon of the gods. Now that we know that we've doubted that, we've investigated that, critical thinking with science, we've now mastered electricity. We use it to do pretty much everything in our lives now. We are the masters, not the gods. In times past, we relied only on faith and belief. We thought that sickness and illness were caused by demons and devils. Now we know that they're caused by germs, viruses, parasites, and we can treat them with medicine. In times past, when we considered the cosmos, we thought that there were wheels within wheels. We thought that the God was turning the crank. We thought that there was a limit to our knowledge. And now that we've looked, this is the Hubble Deep Field photograph. Now that we see that there are galaxies and a self-organizing principle to the universe in which we are a part of, and that we are a self-aware aspect of this universe. We are not the creations. We are part of the universe. The universe is in us. We are indistinguishable. So what I would like to suggest here in this project that I've sort of been pitching to you all, what I would like to suggest is that for the modern American Christian church, it is time to reach a decision point. It's a very similar decision point to the one that I reached. Many of you, I'm sure, have reached these sort of decision points. To really stop and think about what you believe and why you believe and why you have faith and what your doubts are and what are the implications of those doubts. Explore those doubts. Explore the ramifications of these doubts on your faith. Perhaps the faith that you end up with will not be the one that you grew up with. But so what? Right? Perhaps you have to admit now that the seed that you were given was cooked. And you've been putting fake flowers in your pot since you were a little kid. Right? Maybe it's time to admit that. Either way, I don't really care. I'm not out to evangelize Christians to turn them into atheists and agnostics. That's not the goal. What my goal is to bring them to a point where they have to actually consider their belief system, consider why they believe, what they believe, and then go one way or another. I don't really care. If they go the agnostic path, that's fine. If they go the maybe even a more conservative path, maybe a more liberal path, maybe a Unitarian path, I don't mind either. What I find is that the Christians and the free thinkers that I like to spend time with are the ones who have really thought about these issues and have really come to a conclusion for themselves personally that they are comfortable with, that they can discuss, and that they are open to change. Those are the type of people that I like being around, not the people who are dogmatic, whether they're atheists, and will always be atheists no matter what you tell them, and the Christians, who are Christians, and that's just the way that their daddy raised them. And that's the way it is. Those people, love them as fellow humans, but they are not helping on either side. So, this is the project that I've embarked on. It's called The Gospel of Doubt. It is a writing project. It will eventually be a book, published sometime next year. The contributors will be myself as well as these other 9 fine individuals, people that I have known and have gotten to know over the years, all of which are united by a common experience with doubt. Some of them are believers, some of them are non-believers, some of them are former believers. But they all have gone through a process of engaging with their doubt and allowing that process to change them in some way. Sometimes very profound, sometimes less so. But they've been open to it, and they see the value in it now. And they are participating with me in this project to write a gospel of doubt. Each one of them will contribute their own gospels. Mine will be the gospel according to Zach. And my ultimate goal, though it may be a pipe dream, is to have this at least available, hopefully for sale, at First Baptist Dallas and other similar churches.
Yes.
So that is the Gospel of Doubt in a nutshell. I hope the concept resonates with you. I hope you sort of follow along. If you're interested in keeping up to date, the website for the project is gospelofdoubt.net, and you can follow it on Twitter at @DoubtGospel. Thank you so much for your attention here. And I believe we'll move into the final hymn, and we'll be singing all the verses. Thank you.